The fluorescent lights, the gentle hum of the printer, and the simmering rage. The American office isn't a workplace. It's a Cold War fought with stolen yogurts and weaponized compliments. Forget open conflict. The true masterpieces of corporate warfare are silent, brilliant, and deeply, deeply petty. Get ready for 101 tales of the most ingeniously passive-aggressive revenge ever documented. 1. An IT guy, annoyed by a condescending coworker, installed a script on her computer. Every time she typed "per my last email," it auto-corrected to "as my nagging continues." The change was so subtle, she sent 3 increasingly confused emails to a client before anyone pointed it out to her. 2. A manager was notorious for stealing the best snacks from the communal kitchen. So, an employee started bringing in delicious-looking, custom-made dog biscuits that looked exactly like gourmet cookies. He'd just sit back and watch the manager grab a handful, then casually ask, "Enjoying the new dog treats?" 3. In a brutal war over office temperature, one employee brought in a small personal space heater. Her cubicle rival responded by bringing a personal fan. The escalation didn't stop until one side had what looked like an Arctic exploration setup, and the other, a makeshift tropical cabana. 4. To get revenge on a boss who micromanaged everything, an employee started CCing him on utterly mundane emails. "Just confirming I've received your confirmation," and "updating you that I will be taking my scheduled lunch break now." The boss's inbox was flooded with thousands of useless notifications. 5. A woman was tired of her coworker constantly interrupting her. So every time he'd start to cut her off, she'd just seamlessly switch to speaking gibberish, mid-sentence, without breaking eye contact. It was just enough to make him pause, completely confused, and lose his train of thought every single time. 6. An office food thief was finally defeated when their victim began labeling their lunch with increasingly bizarre names. Human organs, plague sample, and my hopes and dreams. Nobody was brave enough to find out what was inside experimental antidote, so the sandwiches remained untouched. 7. After being told his TPS reports lacked pizzazz, a programmer wrote a code that added a single, barely visible dancing hamster GIF to every single report he submitted. It took management 6 months to notice, by which point every official company document was secretly animated by a tiny rodent. 8. A colleague kept stealing a specific person's special coffee mug. The owner's response was to buy a dozen identical mugs and hide them all over the office. In the vents, behind filing cabinets, inside the ceiling tiles. The thief would find a new one every few days, slowly descending into paranoia. 9. To mess with a coworker who was a notorious neat freak, an employee would sneak into his office every night and move every single object on his desk exactly 1 inch to the left. The subtle, consistent chaos drove the guy absolutely mad, convinced he was losing his mind. 10. An employee got tired of his boss taking credit for his ideas in meetings. So he started pitching brilliant but completely fake project names like Project Chimera and Operation Vesuvius. When the boss proudly presented them, he was met with blank stares, while the employee just smiled. 11. After Brenda from accounting repeatedly stole his unofficial parking spot, Mark didn't complain. He just started scattering a huge bag of birdseed on her car's hood every single morning. Her car was constantly covered in bird droppings, but she could never prove it was anything but an act of nature. 12. An entire department got sick of Dave from IT being a condescending jerk. So someone hacked the office's main printer and changed its default language to Finnish. For a full day, every single urgent report and memo came out as complete gibberish, and Dave had to fix a problem nobody would admit to starting. 13. Carol was infamous for microwaving fish, turning the break room into a biohazard zone. Her co-workers declared a silent war. The moment her fish came out, someone would immediately put in a bag of extra butter, slightly burnt popcorn. The only thing worse than microwaved fish is the smell of burnt popcorn. 14. A sales guy named Chad constantly booked the main conference room and then never showed up. So Sarah, the admin, began scheduling fake but hilarious meetings right before his. He'd walk in to kick people out, only to find the room reserved for a mandatory llama grooming seminar. 15. A manager, Mr. Henderson, would only reply to long, detailed emails with a single dismissive letter. K. His subordinate Tim started doing the same. No matter how complex the request from his boss was, the reply was always a professionally cold and immediate, acknowledged. That's it. 16. Gary in logistics was a loud talker, making the entire floor his personal audience. Instead of confronting him, his neighbors coordinated a symphony of annoyance. The second Gary started booming, they'd all begin coughing, dropping pens, or typing furiously in perfect disruptive unison. 17. After his expensive ergonomic chair was stolen by a coworker, Kevin didn't make a scene. He just snuck in early every morning and lowered the chair by a millimeter. After 2 weeks, the thief was complaining of severe back pain, convinced he was suddenly shrinking. 18. To punish a chronic reply-all offender, a savvy employee started a new email chain with the exact same subject line, but only with the necessary people. Her opening line was always, "Moving to a targeted list to spare everyone's inbox." It was a masterclass in public shaming disguised as efficiency. 19. While a notoriously arrogant manager was on vacation, his helpful subordinate discreetly updated his out-of-office email reply. It was changed to read, "I am currently away from my desk. For urgent matters, please reconsider if they are actually urgent." They probably are not. It ran for 4 days before anyone from corporate noticed. 20. To mess with a nosy coworker named Linda, who obsessively checked everyone's shared calendars, an employee filled his own with fake, deeply personal appointments. It's hard for Linda to gossip when she sees his schedule includes 2 p.m. cry in my car and 3 p.m. practice my villain monologue. 21. The office thermostat was a constant battleground. An accountant named Stan, who was always cold, secretly taped a small, reusable ice pack to the thermostat sensor. The system, thinking the room was perpetually hot, would blast the heat all day long, slowly roasting his warm-blooded colleagues. 22. A new hire, Ben, got tired of his boss, Doug, using meaningless corporate buzzwords. So Ben just invented his own. He started talking about proactive granular down-drilling in meetings. Doug, too proud to admit ignorance, started using the fake terms himself, even putting them in company-wide memos. 23. 2 receptionists, Amanda and Nicole, who secretly despised each other, waged their war through compliments. It became a daily duel of sickly sweet barbs in front of customers. "Oh, Nicole, that blouse is so brave," was met with, "Amanda, I just love how you're not afraid to try that hairstyle." 24. A department's beloved Taco Tuesday was constantly criticized by a vegan coworker who started an overlapping Tofu Tuesday. This escalated into a full-blown weekly food war, including Meatball Monday versus Mushroom Monday, with each side trying to make their food smell more aggressively overpowering than the other. 25. Someone kept stealing Frank's favorite fork from the kitchen. Frank's solution was to bring in an absurdly large, novelty-sized fork and chain it to the microwave. The attached note simply read, "Is this one big enough for you?" The utensil theft stopped immediately. 26. During the holiday decorating contest, the marketing team placed a motion-activated singing Santa right outside the quiet accounting department's door. For the entire month of December, every trip to the bathroom was accompanied by a loud, booming, "Ho ho ho, Merry Christmas!" 27. An IT admin, forced to reset a rude salesman's password for the 10th time, set the temporary password to "Learn to Remember." The guy had to shamefully type in a direct insult to his intelligence just to log on, and the IT guy feigned complete ignorance when asked about it. 28. Heather in HR wore an oppressively strong perfume. So, a coalition of her coworkers collectively bought a massive industrial-sized air purifier and placed it right next to her desk. They labeled it the Team Breathability Project and thanked her for inspiring them to improve office air quality. 29. A junior employee named Mike, tasked with taking meeting minutes, got his revenge on a manager who constantly belittled his ideas. In the official record, he would meticulously document every bad idea the manager proposed, while summarizing his own rejected ideas as forward-thinking concepts tabled for future discussion. 30. A non-technical manager, Barb, kept helping a programmer by offering useless suggestions. The programmer, Alex, added a fake, brightly colored idea button to her dashboard that did absolutely nothing. He told her it sent her ideas directly to the dev team. She proudly clicked it dozens of times a day. 31. The war over the last donut took a dark turn when someone, presumably an engineer, rigged the box. The final donut was placed on a pressure-sensitive plate that, when lifted, triggered the office's PA system to loudly play All by Myself by Celine Dion for the entire floor to hear. 32. Kyle was a close talker, constantly invading personal space. His cubicle neighbor Maya started eating an entire raw onion for lunch every day. She never said a word, just let the powerful, tear-inducing fumes create a natural, 3-foot-wide defensive perimeter around her desk. 33. An entire marketing team, fed up with their manager's constant use of the phrase, "let's circle back," bought a physical whiteboard circle. Every time he said the phrase, one of them would silently get up, walk to the whiteboard, and draw another concentric circle on it. He got the message. 34. A programmer named Leo got revenge on a project manager who stole his code by changing the comment language. He rewrote all the code comments into Klingon. The code still worked perfectly, but it was now utterly unreadable and unmanageable for anyone else on the team. 35. The finance department, after denying a raise to the office manager, found their supply budget mysteriously unchanged. Yet they were suddenly using pens that exploded, toilet paper that was basically transparent, and coffee filters that would disintegrate mid-brew. The manager was simply buying half the quantity of premium supplies for himself and hiding them. 36. Two graphic designers, competing for a promotion, began a silent war in the company's shared design templates. One would hide hidden layers with insulting messages, and the other would subtly change the default color palette to clashing, ugly shades that would only appear in new documents. 37. A manager had an incredibly annoying high-pitched laugh. An employee with audio editing skills recorded it, isolated it, and set it as the notification sound for the department's group chat. The manager had to endure hearing her own cackle every 30 seconds until she begged them to stop. 38. Megan in sales was notorious for leaving her dirty dishes in the sink for days. Someone finally snapped, took her moldy coffee mug, and encased it in a Jell-O mold, leaving it on her desk with a note that said, "I think this is yours." 39. An employee, tired of his boss asking him to stay late every Friday, found a local amateur bagpipe group that practiced in a nearby park. He paid them $50 to set up right outside the boss's window every Friday at exactly 5:05 p.m. The boss started leaving on time. 40. After being told his reports weren't synergistic enough, a data analyst built a macro that would randomly insert corporate buzzwords into his documents. Sentences like, "Our core competency is now leveraging impactful paradigms," started appearing, and management praised him for his new strategic insight. 41. The anonymous office feedback box became a weapon. Someone kept submitting absurdly detailed complaints about a coworker's aggressive sighing and the provocative way he staples documents. It forced HR to have a series of increasingly surreal meetings about workplace noises. 42. A guy named Rick kept stealing lunches from the fridge, so his victim, Sarah, fought back with science. She carefully injected the spiciest hot sauce she could find into the very center of her delicious-looking burrito. The office was treated to the sight of Rick sprinting to the water cooler, gasping for air. 43. In an open-plan office, a woman got sick of her neighbor humming show tunes off-key. So, she bought a directional speaker, the kind used in museums, and aimed it right at his head. All day, it played a barely audible loop of a single dissonant piano key being struck over and over. 44. A boss constantly emailed employees after work hours. So, the team banded together. They created an email rule that automatically forwarded any email from him received after 6 p.m. to his wife's personal email account, with the subject line, "Just thinking of you." The late-night emails stopped. 45. Karen's reign as the office plant queen ended when a jealous rival started watering her prized fern with flat Sprite instead of water. The plant slowly yellowed and died over a month, leaving Karen baffled and heartbroken, while her rival offered insincere sugary condolences. 46. To mess with the new tech-obsessed intern, an entire department pretended that one of the office's oldest, most broken printers was voice-activated. They spent a full week watching him get increasingly frustrated, shouting commands like, "Print double-sided, please," at an inanimate object. 47. A feud over the last of the good coffee creamer resulted in one employee buying his own and labeling it breast milk. He was a 50-year-old man with no children. No one ever touched his creamer again. 48. An employee got revenge on a coworker who was a notorious brown-noser by subtly changing the contact name for CEO in his phone to his own number. For the next month, he received all of the coworkers' sappy, late-night, just had a brilliant idea texts meant for the boss. 49. During a brutal summer heatwave, the IT department, which controlled the server room thermostat, was denied a budget request. Mysteriously, the office-wide air conditioning system began to malfunction, running at full blast only when the CFO was walking by the main vents. 50. An employee named Greg was tired of people stealing his specific black Sharpie markers. He bought a new pack, but spent an evening carefully replacing the ink in every single one with a special ink that only shows up under a black light. The office supply thief was eventually revealed by his glowing hands. 51. An entire department conspired to gaslight a deeply annoying coworker by inventing a fake employee. They'd talk about Brenda's great work in meetings, leave documents for her on the printer, and even wish her a happy birthday on the communal calendar. The target was too embarrassed to ever ask who Brenda was. 52. Fed up with a manager who submitted vague, useless IT tickets, a technician started responding with malicious compliance. For a ticket that just said, "Monitor is weird," he spent 4 hours writing a report on how a single pixel was 3 shades off its intended color, and then billed it to the manager's department. 53. A designer had his monitor brightness set to a level that could signal alien life. His neighbor, instead of complaining, simply placed a small, strategically angled vanity mirror on his own desk. The sunlight glare was reflected directly back into the designer's face all day, every day. 54. To get back at a coworker who was painfully unself-aware, an employee created a custom Slack emoji of the guy's face frozen in his most obnoxious, mid-sentence expression. The team then began using it as a reaction to every single dumb comment he made in the chat. 55. A woman named Sharon would not shut up about her gifted child's achievements. So her cube-mate, Dan, invented his own son, Vesuvius, who was apparently a chess grandmaster and concert pianist at age 6. Dan would just one-up every single one of Sharon's stories with a complete fabrication. 56. During the mandatory office Secret Santa, an employee drew the name of a manager he despised. His gift? A beautifully wrapped, expensive-looking book titled Effective Leadership for Dummies. He signed the card, "Saw this and thought of you, hope it helps." 57. A coworker, Jessica, was a self-proclaimed organizing guru who constantly rearranged the shared supply closet into an unusable labyrinth. As revenge, someone snuck in on the weekend and, helpfully, organized her entire desk using the same chaotic logic, color-coding everything by its third letter. 58. A manager who nitpicked every expense report was defeated by an employee who started expensing absolutely everything, down to the cent. 37 cents for a single sheet of paper used for a client. $1.50 for the coffee he drank while thinking about work. The paperwork became a nightmare. 59. In a shared project folder, a programmer was constantly battling a project manager who would upload outdated files. So the programmer began renaming her own correct files with a single, barely noticeable change, using a capital I in place of a lowercase l. The project manager was confused for weeks. 60. An office discovered that one particularly arrogant salesman had an irrational hatred for the word moist. For the next 6 months, the team worked the word into every possible conversation with him. The quarterly reports are looking moist, one would say. "This cake is so wonderfully moist," another would add. 61. To combat a coworker's obsession with a pungent patchouli-scented diffuser, an employee hid 3 different vanilla-scented Glade plugins around his desk, all set to maximum. The resulting smell was a sickly sweet vanilla patchouli war crime that made the entire corner of the office uninhabitable. 62. A guy named Phil always suggested the same terrible, greasy diner for the team's weekly lunch. Before the next planning meeting, a coworker went on Yelp and left a series of incredibly detailed, horrifyingly descriptive fake reviews about the diner's adventurous food safety standards. 63. A manager who constantly ignored important calendar invites started receiving a flood of new ones from his team. The invites were for incredibly mundane, one-minute tasks like meeting to confirm we are still working and urgent sync on pen usage. His calendar became a useless wall of notifications. 64. To slowly drive a punctual, obsessed coworker insane, an employee would sneak into his office after hours and move the hands of his analog wall clock forward by exactly 1 minute. He did this every day for 2 weeks until the man was convinced he was experiencing a time distortion field. 65. The whole office knew their boss was a die-hard Dallas Cowboys fan. So, after a particularly brutal loss to the Eagles, the entire department coordinated to wear green the next day. No one ever mentioned the game. They just let the sea of silent, victorious green do the talking. 66. An IT guy, tired of an executive streaming Netflix and slowing down the network, didn't block the site. Instead, he throttled that specific executive's IP address down to 1998 dial-up speeds. The buffering circles on his screen became a form of beautiful, silent digital justice. 67. Someone placed a perfectly official-looking, yet completely fake, anonymous HR complaint box in the break room. After a month, they collected the submissions and anonymously emailed the most unhinged and hilarious complaints, like one about aggressive blinking, to the entire company. 68. To expose a coworker who pretended to have read every business book ever published, a team fabricated a quote from a non-existent author. They put it on a motivational poster in the break room. The target not only claimed to love the quote, but spent 10 minutes explaining its deeper strategic meaning to everyone. 69. The office coffee pot was constantly being left empty. The solution wasn't a note, it was a disappearance. Someone took the entire office supply of coffee filters and hid them. There was coffee, and there was a coffee maker. But without the crucial third element, there was only chaos. 70. A manager had a prized "Hang in there" poster with a kitten. A graphic designer on the team secretly created a tiny photorealistic sticker of the kitten's rope snapping and carefully placed it on the poster. It was 2 weeks before the manager noticed and had a small, public meltdown. 71. After his petty boss denied a legitimate vacation request, an employee named Dave read the company handbook. He then began taking his 2 legally mandated 15-minute breaks with theatrical precision, setting up a folding beach chair and a small umbrella in the hallway right outside his boss's office. 72. A coworker's entire desk was a shrine of nodding bobbleheads, creating a constant, distracting motion. Her neighbor didn't complain. He installed a tiny, silent, vibrating motor under his own desk that he could activate with his knee, making all her bobbleheads wobble furiously on command. 73. A senior partner was notorious for parking his giant SUV over the line, taking up 2 spots. A junior associate bought a box of sidewalk chalk and drew a brand new, perfectly outlined parking spot around the car, complete with a hand-drawn sign that read, "Princess Parking." 74. An employee named Mark was an infamous helper, constantly offering unsolicited advice and messing up projects. The team lead finally started assigning him critical but entirely fake research tasks. Mark spent a full week diligently compiling a report on the migratory patterns of non-existent birds. 75. An entire sales team, fed up with a coworker who constantly adjusted his tie and checked his reflection, chipped in to buy a giant, ornate, full-length mirror. They mounted it directly in his line of sight from his desk, with a plaque that said, "For John, we see you." 76. A manager who constantly shot down new ideas was defeated by weaponized catering. An employee in charge of ordering lunch for the innovation meeting started exclusively ordering the most boring, uninspired food imaginable: plain turkey sandwiches on white bread with no condiments. 77. To punish a chronic meeting ranter who loved the sound of his own voice, a tech-savvy coworker created a meeting bingo card with all his cliches. He shared it with the team, and they would subtly pass $1 to the winner every time the ranter filled someone's card. 78. A woman named Brenda kept leaving passive-aggressive notes on the coffee machine. So someone started responding to them. The note, "Is it so hard to make a new pot?" was met with a new note underneath. Yes, Brenda, for some of us, it is a daily Sisyphean struggle. 79. A man who sat near the entrance would obnoxiously rate his female coworkers' outfits as they walked in. So the women collectively decided on a uniform. For an entire week, every single woman in the department wore the exact same outfit, a plain gray sweatshirt and jeans. 80. An employee, tired of a coworker who always left a single, unusable dribble of coffee in the pot, bought a collection of tiny doll-sized teacups. Every time he found the near-empty pot, he'd pour the remaining drops into one of the tiny cups and leave it on the offender's desk. 81. A guy named Steve would loudly take personal calls on speakerphone. His neighbor's solution was to begin participating. He'd offer unsolicited financial advice to Steve's wife and weigh in on what Steve should pick up for dinner, all from his desk, as if he were part of the conversation. 82. After being told to show more enthusiasm, a deeply cynical IT admin changed the default Windows startup and shutdown sounds for the entire office. Now, every morning began with a chorus of sarcastic "Yay!" and every evening ended with a sad trombone sound effect. 83. A manager's prized possession was a ridiculously oversized, ornate pen on his desk that no one was allowed to touch. An intern, on his last day, carefully disassembled the pen and replaced the premium ink cartridge with one filled with a novelty disappearing ink. 84. In an act of pure psychological warfare, an employee started a rumor that the office Keurig machine was sentient and only brewed good coffee for people it liked. The resulting paranoia, with people talking to and pleading with an appliance, destroyed office productivity for a month. 85. A coworker was a notorious one-upper who had a better story for everything. So a group decided to invent an utterly unbelievable story about a fictional weekend trip involving a hot air balloon and a minor celebrity. They watched with glee as the one-upper tried and failed to top it. 86. A video conference war began when one employee used a pristine, minimalist virtual background. His rival escalated daily. It started with a slightly messy room, then a picture of a landfill, and culminated in him using a live streaming webcam feed of a tire fire as his background for the weekly sales meeting. 87. The office had a helpful Hannah, who left condescending post-it notes everywhere. Her main victim started a counteroffensive. She would take Hannah's notes, correct the grammar and punctuation on them with a red pen, and then tape them back up right next to the originals. 88. A manager kept scheduling meetings for 4:59 p.m. on Fridays. His team collectively blocked out that time slot on their shared calendars for the rest of the year with a recurring, mandatory event titled Project Morale. He couldn't schedule over it without admitting he was the problem. 89. The office music war reached its peak when an employee, tired of his neighbor's blaring heavy metal headphones, began playing a high-frequency sound just on the edge of human hearing from a small speaker on his desk. It was completely silent to everyone else, but it drove the musicians slowly mad. 90. When management enforced a brutally strict clean desk policy, one programmer complied with malicious precision. Every evening, he would take every single item from his desk, monitors, keyboard, photos, and carefully stack it all on his chair, rendering it a useless, leaning tower of hardware. 91. To take revenge on a nosy coworker who read everyone's printouts, an accountant printed a single sheet of paper that just said, in a huge font, "I know you're reading this, Kevin." He then left it sitting face up in the printer tray all day long. 92. A manager who constantly borrowed his employees' best ideas was given a special notebook for his birthday. The team had it custom printed so that every single page was covered in a faint but very visible watermark that read, "Property of the actual creative team." 93. After being told he wasn't a team player for not sharing progress, a developer started replying to his manager's simple requests by hitting reply all to the entire 50-person department listserv. Per your request, I have now changed the button color from blue to slightly darker blue. Is this synergistic enough for everyone? The public shaming was immense. 94. A feud over the office candy jar was settled when one employee, a chemist in her spare time, started bringing in delicious custom-made chocolates. The secret ingredient, a tiny, harmless dose of a powerful, non-prescription laxative, The office candy thief was self-exiled to the bathroom. 95. An arrogant project lead would always end his critiques with, "Just my 2 cents." A subordinate on the team finally snapped. After the next critique, she silently walked up to the lead's desk, placed 2 shiny pennies on his keyboard, and walked away without a word. 96. As a final act before quitting, a disgruntled receptionist changed the hold music for the entire company's phone system. He replaced the generic elevator music with a 10-hour loop of a screaming goat. It took it 2 full days to figure out how to change it back, during which every client was treated to relentless farm animal chaos. 97. The battle for the armrest in a cubicle farm was legendary. One man ended it by coating his side of the armrest with a clear, incredibly sticky substance used for trapping insects. His rival touched it once and never, ever encroached on his territory again. 98. A manager insisted on using an ancient dot matrix printer that made a horrific screeching noise. A tech employee, tasked with fixing it, simply programmed it to play the first few bars of "Never Gonna Give You Up," using only the sound of the printhead every time a job started. 99. A woman was tired of her male coworker explaining her own job to her, so she bought an air horn. Every time he started to mansplain, she would give a short, sharp, deafening blast, then calmly say, "Sorry, I thought I heard a condescending idiot." 100. For the mandatory holiday potluck, an engineer, furious about being forced to participate, brought in a deconstructed casserole. It was a perfectly organized tray with every single ingredient laid out raw and separate. Uncooked pasta, a can of soup, a block of cheese, and a bag of onions. 101. The ultimate war was waged over a shared Google Sheet. An employee, tired of a coworker constantly deleting his data, didn't lock the cells. Instead, he wrote a script that, every time his rival deleted a cell, would automatically email the guy's mother with the subject line, "I'm misbehaving at work again." All right, we've laid out 101 blueprints for petty revenge. Now the comment section is the real vault. We know you have a story, the one you don't tell HR. That perfect diabolical act of passive aggression you witnessed, or maybe, just maybe, orchestrated yourself. Don't let it die with you. Anonymity is your shield. Confess your genius below in the comments. Hit like if this gave you terrible ideas and subscribe for more ammunition.